Ready? I think we're good. Excellent. Did we plan for success to be here? I hope we did. This week was planning for success. Let's open with a word of prayer. Lord, thank you for the Sabbath day. Thank you for this church. Thank you for waking us up today. Be with us in this moment, in these little moments. They all matter. Help us fill our minds, hearts, bodies with your love, your knowledge, your spirit. Amen. So the title is Planning for Success. I think a good question is, what is success? Is there worldly success and then perhaps spiritual success? What's success to God? These are the questions I think we should talk about right now. So what's worldly success? What's success according to the world? Money, fair, power and money, fame, power, money, stuff, fame. Right, that was also success according to me for a long, long time. Depending on the day, I still may say that, right? I don't know about you guys. But yeah, power, money, fame, stuff. Jane. Worldly. What's the difference? So what's that definition? What's success to God? According to God, what would success be? Mike. Oh, the word servant. Good and faithful servant. So boy, servant sounds different from money, fame, power, and stuff. When you think of money, fame, power, and stuff, do you think of a servant? Yeah, right. So if we look, I want to look at Psalm 15. This is a Psalm of David. In my Andrews Study Bible, they call Psalm 15 the character of those who may dwell with the Lord. So let's look at Psalm 15. Perhaps this will tell us about what success is for God. It starts with a question. Lord, who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell in your holy hill? Here's the answer. He who walks uprightly and works righteousness, speaks the truth in his heart. So those are the does things. Walk uprightly, work righteousness, speak truth in his heart. Here's some nots. He does not backbite with his tongue, does not do evil to his neighbor, does not take up reproach against his friend, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, but he honors those who fear the Lord. He who swears to his own hurt does not change. He who does not put out his money at usury, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved. So, it starts by suggesting perhaps success is walking uprightly, righteousness, speaking truth in your heart. I didn't hear fame, money, power, things. Who's the king of the world? Who's Satan? Yeah, Satan's the king of the world, right? I mean, we're told that. This is his domain. This is Satan's spot. So the opposite of worldly success is success for God. True success is to become citizens of the kingdom of heaven, yes? Right? God's given us advice about how to do that, how to be that, how to do that, how to get there. Is worldly success incompatible with it? Can you have worldly success and spiritual success? Success with God? I think that's fair, Mike. Yes, as long as you give God credit. Natalie? Right? Yes, Jane? Hmm. I'll ask it another way. Do you have to be poor, have no stuff, and have no power to go to heaven? So, let's say this. If you want to be successful in this life, and I think the success we're going to talk about is spiritual, godly success, right? If you want to be successful in this life and be ready for the following life or our future life, follow this piece of advice. And this is from Proverbs multiple times, and that is, don't stand idly by. So there's a resource. It comes from somewhere in our church. There's a website you can go to and get like the Sabbath school study. There's somebody that summarizes Ellen White's writings on the topic for the week. And usually it's a couple pages long. For this week, it was 8 pages. And that made sense to me because I told my wife over the years, reading many things written by her, there's this theme I keep feeling about: don't be idle. Don't stand idly by. Be diligent. Work. Be fruitful. Don't be lazy. I picked that up in a lot of things she says. And there are 8 pages of her saying that very thing. Don't stand idly by. Natalie. Right. When everything was perfect before the fall, right, Natalie? Let's be clear. It wasn't, some people I think get confused and think, okay, sin happened and now Adam's got to go work. No. This was when everything was perfect. They worked. That's right. Sure, it didn't get easier, did it? That's right. Times of leisure and rest are good. They're necessary. But God made us to be active, didn't he? He made us to be active. When do you feel your best? When do you feel your best? When you accomplish something? And I'm not talking about something fantastic, but just think about it. When do you feel your best during the day? Right? Do you feel your best if you've had a day where you've just been kind of idle? Or if your health isn't so great and you're unfortunately stuck sitting in a chair all day because you're broken or you're hurt or you don't feel well? Or compare it to a different day when you're out and about. You're organizing this, cleaning that, serving this person in this way, helping this person? Which feels better? Second. Yeah. And sometimes, Natalie, in your life, you've probably missed that, whether it's due to health or something else. And doesn't that day feel different? So, this never ends. Being active, not being idle, isn't just for kids or just for guys in their 40s or just for teens, is it? It's until our last day. You're just a little older than I, and you remain active every day, don't you? Because yes. Hey, we can do real talk here. That's what this is for. I'm not worried about. Let's. And might I suggest that home and family is not an idle activity? In fact, it's the opposite, isn't it? Let's be real about that too. Now, our world, depending upon when you are in the world, but even today in our world, it would say that that is a lesser activity. And that it's better to work and make money, wouldn't it? To buy things. That's what our world would say. Our world would say that's freedom. Money equals freedom, according to our world, doesn't it? And it equals things, which equal good feelings, which equal... Oh, and this home thing? Meh, boring. Right? Mike? Yes?
I think the devil causes husbands.
Sure. Well, that's right. I mean, you're busy focused on obtaining, getting, paying what you already got, and other things fall by the wayside. There's only so many hours in a day, so many minutes in an hour. That's correct. So, one of the lessons, I think it was Monday, talked about a successful reminder for those in their youth to be like, hey, by the way, don't forget the Creator. Maybe they're the ones that need the reminder, perhaps, right? I think that's what I read. That's what you're suggesting. Otherwise, hey, you guys are off the hook. You don't have to remember the Creator. Congrats. No, I think it's saying, hey, youth, don't forget you have a Creator. So this is a very special piece of advice that can be applied to every area of our life, yes? Our education, how we fulfill our basic needs. Oh, and it's useful when you plan a marriage. Who could have thought of that, right? Of course it is. Mike, I read your book. I did, yeah, in 3 days. It was a good book. Yeah. I don't know if you've read Mike's book. Mike authored a book. It's a very good book about stories of his life. Yeah, good. Good. Mike, I just happen to know from your book, you've been married twice. I have been married twice. I would say, and this was not in your story, but I would say it's in mine. In my first marriage, I did not remember the Creator in the days of my youth. In fact, I didn't know the Creator at that time in my life. Right? I wasn't lucky enough to know the Creator my whole life. I wasn't raised in the church. And I make no excuses, but I just say that's a reality. And it plays a role. Knowing the Creator can be quite helpful, as we know. And I think it makes sense in the topic of marriage for sure, right? And everything else. Everything else. Difficult. Marriage, even when you both remember the Creator, is difficult. It's constant, isn't it? The work. That's right. How about being a mom or dad? Even if everybody in the whole house knows the Creator and we're all on the track. Difficult. Can change day by day. Natalie. So, the things that are the best, marriage, kids, family, these are wonderful things that were created, right? We didn't invent that. It was created. Man, woman, marriage, kids, family. Things that are the best are the things that the devil will attack first, yes? Doesn't that make sense? The things that are the most precious, the things that deliver the best results, that can maybe bring us as close to God as possible. That's what he would attack first. Isn't that what you would do if you were the adversary? You're going to go for the most important stuff. Make it the most difficult. Constantly under attack. Be so vigilant of that. And remind ourselves of that, by the way. I think sometimes we're too hard on ourselves when things go wrong. We certainly have a role, don't get me wrong. This is not a scapegoat. But we also must remember there's an adversary that's not being helpful to us at all times. And that is stalking us like a roaring lion, doing his best to make us have a bad day.
For changes. Here it's put in one class.
Right.
It keeps working.
It works. It works. That's right, Natalie. Sure. Isn't that a great question? Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I think we would be quick to read the Bible and to suggest, well, the person that did the murder is at fault. There you have it. But it's not that easy, is it? Who raised those kids? How were they raised? What were they taught? How, That's a good point. So, if we're planning for success, heavenly success, worldly success, and we want successful families, what do we do? according to the Bible, every Christian family must take care of their children. Right? Duty is an instruction. I think that's what we have to do. Protection. So what do? We provide them with a Christian setting at home. We teach them to have a good attitude towards work. And I don't mean like a job with a paycheck, but just not being idle. That's what I mean when I say work, right? Being
Garbage out.
productive. Take the garbage out. Work, right. Not be lazy, not be idle. And to ensure that they get a good education. Not just meaning in school, but in home, all around, right? We have to learn things. We could have been born with knowing everything we need to know. That was a possibility, I think, but we weren't created that way, were we? I think it does. I think it does, doesn't it, Natalie? Right? Our diets, right? We know that with our health, with the health message. I think that's taking care. Our children when they're younger, are essentially powerless to provide themselves with nutrition. We make those choices for them, don't we? That's a part of it. So 1 Timothy 5:8 has not an admonishment, but some pretty stark instruction here. It says, "But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." Whoa, that's pretty strong stuff. Because how bad is an unbeliever? I don't know. They're not going to make it. Who wants to be worse than an unbeliever? Right? Not me. So what this says is, if you don't provide for your own, especially those in your house, not faithful, worse than an unbeliever. Boy, we have a role in our families, and this doesn't mean people just with families don't mean a husband, a wife, and kids. Families can mean husband and wife, no kids. Families can mean just a man, right, with his extended family that's never been married, or a woman that's never been married. Don't think that you are exempt from the word family if you're not married with children. That's not a definition of family, is it? Right. Family is a multi-meaning word. You can never be married and never have kids and be part of multiple families. You are part of multiple families. So you don't get an out, okay? You're not free if you think that it only means husband, wife, 2 kids, white picket fence, and a dog. There's other families than that, even though that is an example of a family. So I will read just an excerpt from The Desire of Ages here to kind of bring us up to where we are. Ellen White says that all, I think that means everyone, should find something to do that will be beneficial to themselves. Hey, that's all right. That's fair. Beneficial to ourselves and helpful to others. 2 things. We should all find something to do that would be beneficial for us and helpful to others. God created or appointed work as a blessing. As a blessing. And only the diligent worker can find true glory and joy in life. So even though our work may have been made more difficult after the fall, we were not created to be idle or lazy. It's not a burden. She's saying our work is a blessing, and only the diligent worker can find true glory and joy of life. The approval of God rests with loving assurance upon children and youth who cheerfully take part in the duties of their house, sharing the burdens of mom and dad. Such children will go out for the home to be useful members of society. Work, not being idle, is a blessing, not a curse. It's where we can find true glory and joy of life. It's true. And let's talk about what work means. So work could certainly mean my occupation, my job, right? I perform work. I'm a lawyer. That's work. But is it my home work too? Kids? Marriage? Neighborhood? Work, I think, is obviously not just what we do for a paycheck. And it's also not something negative. It's not negative to say your marriage is work. Your family is work. That's not being negative. Just got to work at it. That's right. Your house is work. What happens to a home, and this is so evident to me in Florida, what happens to a home, physically to a home, if it goes uncared for a short time in Florida? It literally disintegrates, right? Like things grow on it, dirt appears everywhere, it kind of starts to do this. It's remarkable. You can tell when a place hasn't been lived in after 3, 4, 5 months and no one's caring for it. That fast. It takes a little longer in Michigan to see that happen, but it happens. But here in Florida, you can just watch something, even made of stone and brick and tile, just kind of turn to dirt if you don't care for it. Yeah? That same thing happens, yes, Joe? Oh boy, I didn't even mention that work. You're right. Right. What's right? I was thinking about job, family. What about the Lord's work? Yeah. Yeah, Mike.
Work.
Hmm? Yeah.
Do what you're missing. Glad you didn't start sooner.
It's true. You know, Ray, you may not remember this, but we were here. We visited years ago, but we came back kind of once we moved permanently, and we were chatting outside, and you said, so what do you do? You asked me what I do. And I started to tell you what I do, what I've done. And you said, no. You said, no. What do you do at the church? What do you do for your church? And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll never forget that.
You did.
Right. Yeah, I know you forgot it. I didn't, because I was like, boy, that's actually a better question. It gave me great pause. And I left and I thought, I better think about what I do. Because I told you what I do in the world. And you just reminded me that work, what's work, right? The Lord's work.
You can mix both of them.
That's the power,
Mix both.
right? We are certainly told to be not of the world, but we are told at the same time to be in the world, aren't we? That's right. That's right. That's right. Just like your landlord, right? Your landlady. No, you should read Mike's book, right? Why are you sitting where you're sitting? Many things, don't get me wrong. But that was a keystone turning point in your life, and it was simply his landlady that happened to be a Christian and was living for the Lord in one interaction. Right? It's a pivot point. It's a keystone. And so you're completely right. You don't know what's happening if you're living your life in that way and then the things that happen from it. That's right. So let's talk about working successfully. Colossians 3:23 says, "And whatever you do, do it heartily as to the Lord and not to men." So you just transitioned me to that point. Whatever you do. Paul advised us to do our job well always, not only to win their favor when their eye is on you, right? But always. We're called to work with integrity and to please God always, instead of pleasing our managers and clients or whomever it might be before God. It's a difference. And what then happens? Well, people are blessed by you, aren't they? What happens if that's what you do? What happened to Laban? Was Laban blessed by Jacob's faithful work? He said as much. Turning point in his life. How about this? What about Potiphar? Right? What was the story with Joseph and Potiphar? Potiphar blessed by Joseph's faithful daily work, living. Yes. Potiphar appreciated the integrity of Joseph and God's blessings that kind of went through Joseph to Potiphar. If we look, let me see, there's a good question. All right, this is fair. So this working successfully, we're all agreeing is a great idea. Well, what changes might you need to make, you think? We all, I think, agree it's a good idea. Perhaps we all do it sometime, maybe most of the time. But I don't think obviously we do it all the time. What are some changes we could make to make sure this is the type of work that we're doing? I have an idea. I think one change we could make would be to develop a routine similar to what you do, Natalie. Sets the stage for the day, doesn't it? That morning time, the beginning of your day. I'm going to suggest you don't even have to be older to be open to that. I know what you were saying, and you weren't saying that, but I can think about myself. I can think about myself traveling for work, walking through an airport, whatever. I'm never bothered or negatively affected by someone who smiles at me or makes a kind comment or engages in some way. In fact, because it's so rare today, I will be like, text Sarah, hey, you won't believe what just happened. That's what I did. That's what happens. It's so rare, right? Oh, does it feel good though? Well, that's a good way. That's a good idea. It's a good way to do it. So I was reading something. I'll call what it was, but it talked about one thing you can do. It reminds me. I keep always bringing this up, but when you can't fall asleep, you go down the alphabet and pray people's names. Correct. One of the things I read was when you're walking down the street, just see somebody, just say a prayer for them. You don't even know their name. Woman in the red coat. Sir sitting on the side. Whoever it is, just pray for these people. Changes your disposition, Natalie. Good idea. And if you drive on I-75, you'll have a chance every day to do just that. Right? Especially these months. That's a different story for a different time. It's not Sabbath school, but these months, don't drive on I-75 because you'll see that every time. But that's a good idea. What's the result of this working successfully? We know what's the result? People coming to Christ, perhaps. People's minds and hearts opening to something different. To being willing to consider something different than the world, or something more than the world, something better than the world. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't think that's negative to think about being an employee for the Lord. I think that's fair. Yeah. So a different Ellen White quotation. This is from Life Sketches. There's honor in any class of work that's essential to be done. Right? Let the law of God be made the standard of action, which then kind of sanctifies all labor, whatever that labor might be. Faithfulness in the discharge of every duty makes the work noble and reveals a character that God can approve. I don't have the direct quotation, but this, when I read it, reminded me of things that Martin Luther King had said when there was a strike for sanitary workers, and I think it was in Memphis. Right? People would think, well, they're just janitors, sanitary workers. Why does that matter? Any class of work, do that work well. Any class of work is blessed by God. Is one better than the other? Is the fact of having a doctorate degree or multiple doctorate degrees or advanced degrees make your work or my work more important than somebody who dropped out of high school's work? All needs to be done. Now, would our world suggest that as the answer? Probably not. That's the crux. That's the rub. Our world at different times has suggested different things, like everybody needs to go to college. That was in my generation, and I think before me and even after me. But if you were in school in the 70s, 80s, 90s, it was clear to you that the only path for proper success was to go to college, whether you wanted to or not, whether you knew what you were going to do or not. Nope, that was the path to success, period. Including, by the way, finishing, if you've got to finish high school. Now, look, there's nothing wrong with finishing high school. There's nothing wrong with going to college. But it's not the only path to success. This brings me back to what we were talking about earlier, whether it's a man at home or a woman at home. Our world, for some reason, is convinced that it's more important to be out in the world making large sums of money versus being at home and keeping people alive and healthy, nutrition, clean, educated, knowing the Lord. For some reason. Well, we know the reason. Who's the king of the world? I mean, look, this is what we first talked about, but that's the reason. And that is drilled into us by the world from the moment we open our eyes or open our ears. That's the answer. That's success. That's more important. That's more valuable to society. Right? Boy, aren't we safe in just assuming the opposite whenever we hear stuff like that? You can just be like, no, we know that's not true. It's the opposite. So let's give some advice on achieving success. Psalm 1, verse 3, he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. That sounds pretty good. I'd like to be that he or she or person, right? How would that feel to be the person that essentially is in a spot that grows and never dies and prospers? And whatever you do is successful. So how do we get there? The main biblical piece of advice on achieving success, I would say, is to what? Avoid evil. I think that's the best place to start. Avoid evil. How do we avoid evil? Through our willpower? Through our strength? I'm pretty strong. I can do hard things. I get my teeth filled without Novocaine. That's true. Fun fact about me. Ready for second fact? If I have to give blood, I pass out. How about that? Both true. Completely true. Isn't that wild? Drill my teeth without Novocaine, I don't care. Prick a little needle, and take a little thing of blood.
I'm watching Dr. Martin.
I can't stand it. I faint, and it's not controllable. I can't control it. So what's someone like me? What's the best way to avoid evil then? Oh, yes.
None of us can overcome it.
Really?
Try.
Oh. Natalie? Oh. Good. Meditate on the law. Yeah, that's right. That's right. What if we made the law of God our delight? What about that? It's kind of what we just said, right? Would that be helpful to help defeat evil, maybe, as an idea? How about this? Proverbs is full of gems. Boy, sometimes that can be really not hard to read, but you can read it and kind of do this, right? Proverbs 3:5 says, "Don't lean on your own understanding, but seek God's advice." Hey, that sounds like an idea. That sounds like a reasonable idea to achieve success. Proverbs 6:6-8 tells us, save part of your income. Interesting idea. Proverbs 27 tells us to keep track of things like our income and our expenses. Proverbs 15 says, oh, by the way, live within your means. Spend less than you earn. Hey, there's an idea. There's an idea, right? Proverbs 13, be a diligent worker. Proverbs 22, avoid debt. So we've got keep track of income and expenses, live within your means, save part of your income, avoid debt, be a diligent worker, don't lean on your understanding, seek God's advice. What about keeping eternal life in mind as you live this life? What do you think of that? How is that helpful? How is it helpful to keep eternal life in mind while you're living this life?
All of those things that you just read,
Yes.
still have catastrophe happen in your life.
Yeah.
God can help you do all of those things. You never know what's going to happen.
That's right. It's not in our control, is it?
You have to keep in mind that.
Right?
Goal in mind. Up until you get to the
Yeah. So, keeping eternal life in mind as you're in this life, in this world, seems to be a backdrop setting to really keep you pointed in the right direction. And then there's these things that Proverbs says that obviously are very helpful. What about being faithful by giving back your tithe and offerings to God? Helpful guidepost? Keep your mind in the right spot, keep your heart in the right spot. Might I suggest that maybe that's why it was created in the first place? Right? Why are the Ten Commandments there? Why were they given? Guideposts? Needed it. Needed it. God need our tithe? But apparently we need to give it. I would assume. Doesn't need it. Apparently we need it. Apparently we need it.
read it, you'll find out where you are.
What are some tangible, that means something you can touch, taste, and feel. Intangible is something that's just kind of out there. What are some tangible things that you do or we can do to make the law of God your delight? I'm just curious. Because it's fair, it's okay, and it's safe to assume that sometimes, some days, some minutes, it's not your delight. That's okay. That happens. I'm just saying, when you happen to be in a really good spot and the law of God is your delight, what are some things, how does that happen? What are some tangible things that, Peace. Does it feel good to have peace? Yes, peace. Because yes. Mm.
First jobs for me, I don't want to do
Yeah. Sure.
of the Lord in his life. I say, Wes, you missed it.
Mm. Yeah. Others can benefit. How do we make the law of God our delight? So someone that's a new believer, when you're a new believer or a non-believer, it's pretty easy to look at the law of God. Harsh. I think if there was like a TV show that was like lightning and storms and like the 10 Commandments come down, right? Like that. I think I saw that once. And you think of that and you think, Urgh. How do you explain that that's the opposite or that it's a delight? Boy, our world doesn't say so.
Maybe not directly
Yeah.
but for me, I think of eternity, not just
Hmm.
that way, but eternity going backwards.
Hmm.
And in that eternity going backwards, God was there. And so, who is this God that I worship? God that created all of what we know. Getting to know him, Bible, to find who he is, character, my life, in the way I view what he asked me to do.
That's right. Yeah, that's right, because you can look at what he asked you to do and start and stop there. Or you can look at the character of the person and the story behind those things and get the full context, they call it. So every other day in my job, I say, what's the context? Because someone will ask a question, can I do X? And I'll say, well, it's fact sensitive. Fact sensitive. We need context. Things are not black and white and absolute, in certain regards. So we need to know the context. We need to know the story behind the question. We need to understand what happened before and what's going to happen after. And then you can assess things. And so that's a fair point. You can look at the law of the Lord in a vacuum by itself. and perhaps get hung up. Or you can look at it in the context of what the Lord is and what we know about the Lord and what the Lord was and is and will be, and it changes it. Natalie. Whole thing. That's the whole thing. So would that also be advice on achieving success? Love the Lord. Love the Lord, love yourself, love your neighbor. Right? Yeah. Yes, yes. Hmm? Sure. Feel it. Hmm.
I pray.
Hmm. Yes. Be very alone. Yes.
I entered the door, and in my mind I said, my mind immediately at the third table.
I love it. Because, that's right, and because we have to remind ourselves, this world is the world. We're not made for the world, that's right, but we're in the world, and when we're in the world, does He want us to walk around miserable every day? Are we asked to be angry? Are we asked to be bitter every day? Are we asked to just walk around and shout at the world, "You're wrong, world"? Or in this place that is not ideal, that we are in, are we promised peace, comfort, joy? Right? Sometimes we might, as faithful churchgoers, might need to remind ourselves of that. Sometimes you can be in a place that if too many people are smiling, people might think it's not serious enough. Don't smile too much in church, right? Don't get too joyful in this place. No. Remind ourselves that, wait, why are we here? He wanted you to have a good lunch. Yeah, that's right. 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 That's right. That's right. Mike?
Sometimes things that look bad end up being good.
Yeah.
I felt really good because as I was
Please tell it. I like those. Yeah. Oh. False alarm. Yeah. I was going to say, this is not an accident.
Thank God the alarm went off,
Right. Right. That's not an accident. It's not an accident that you were here, that happened, and he was here because he needed that moment, and his wife is there and probably needed that moment. Wonderful. Right. Well, we've done it. We haven't just planned for success. We've gotten advice on achieving success. Congrats. I would say your work is done, but we don't work on a day like today. But our worship of planning for success and achieving success has been successful for the last hour. Someone like to offer prayer to close before we end? Anybody? I can do it. I can do it. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this church. Thank you for these moments that we just had. Thank you for filling our minds, our hearts, our bodies with your spirit, your love, your knowledge. Lord, when we get together, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 of us, 15 of us, it's really special moments, and we thank you for that. Let us keep doing that, right, every Sabbath. Be with us now as we take a short pause in the organized activities, but shortly start our corporate church worship to you, for you, and about you. Amen. Yes.